Hi,
Hi Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
That's all right.
um, so why don't we start off? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
So I'm 27 now. So I went to college when I left school at 16 and did my accountancy A level. Didn't really enjoy the A level sort of side. I could I knew what I was doing, but as soon as the exam came round, I couldn't get it onto paper. Um, so my college teacher actually put me forward for the AAT level 2. So I completed that, absolutely loved it. Loved that you learnt a chunk, did an exam, passed it, learnt another chunk, passed it, learnt another chunk, passed it. It wasn't that whole like you've got to wait to the end of 2 years to recap on everything. Carried on with my level 3. Unfortunately, I didn't pass my synoptic, so I sort of just brushed it aside. Was like, oh, I can do that at a later date. And then the qualification was changing, so I think I had about 18 months to do it. So when I was 22, I went back to college for 6 weeks, learnt the synoptic and passed it, and
Oh
got
wow.
level 3 qualified. Was in and out of finance jobs. So I worked as a finance assistant at a school, did finance in property management, and then I actually landed a role at an accountancy firm as a trainee accountant.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
so I'm halfway through my level 4 at the moment, down the apprenticeship route, and yeah, really enjoying it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, really enjoying it.
So that sort of answers, I guess, a little bit of why you chose that qualification. So why you chose the AAT, initially studying from A level. I myself actually did A levels initially. So I obviously did my GCSEs, did my A levels, was being pushed towards the university route, and I decided against it because I thought I'm not going to get a job, or there's a very slim chance.
That was exactly my sort of view. I didn't really want to move away from home. I looked into the university route, don't get me wrong, but I found that although you get a degree in accountancy, you're still then not a chartered accountant. And I
Yeah,
thought,
that's
if
it.
I'm still going to have to do qualifications afterwards, why not start them now and miss the university, miss all the debt, and actually, whether this will come up in another question, I found it more useful actually being in practice and doing the day release at college, because I'm putting into place what I'm studying.
That's
I'm
it.
not just learning it from a textbook. Anybody can learn anything from a textbook as far as I'm concerned, but you can't put it into practice unless you're doing it. And I've gained more knowledge just from doing small company accounts than I would have done sat at uni in a dorm room somewhere.
I think as well, if you do AAT with a training provider, you've got individuals around you who've either done the AAT or they've got a professional qualification in accounting, and they're always there to ask a question.
Oh,
And
definitely. And I find myself sometimes I will ask a question to my college tutor and they'll explain it really well, but I still don't get it.
yeah,
Then I'll go into work and somebody will just put a slight spin on just the wording, or just tell me to look at it in a slightly different way, give me a different example. And I'm like, ah, I know
yeah,
exactly
all
what to
of
do
a sudden it
now.
makes sense.
Yeah,
That's it's quite interesting because I sometimes get asked, well, why did I create this YouTube channel? Why did where did it all come from? And the initial idea, I thought about 7 years ago or so.
yeah,
And it was when I was studying and I found that, like you just said, exactly that. If somebody just told me something in an ever so slightly different way or gave me a bit of context behind it, it's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I get it now.
Like,
Whereas,
finally get it now.
you know, but I find a lot of students don't have that. They might not work in practice. They might not have, the community around them to be able to just ask really random questions that they think, oh, it's a stupid question. I don't want to ask it.
I definitely
Um,
think that's why I joined like the AAT forum
yeah,
on Facebook, because like even if I find somebody's asked a question and I know the answer, for me to then actually explain it in a comment makes me understand it that little bit more. So actually it helps me, even though I sort of already know it, I'm just going that one step deeper thinking, but why am I doing this, to then be able to explain it to somebody. And I think it's really good.
So what did you enjoy the most about studying AAT?
I personally really enjoyed like the personal tax and the business tax modules. I find that with AAT, a lot of their content online is then similar to their exams. So when I sit an exam, I'm not really shocked by the content that comes in,
Yeah.
because I've already been doing it in the mock exams. I think AAT, I think it's brilliant. I personally now don't want to go on to chartership. I'm quite happy just getting my AAT qualification. But I think it does need to have that backing a little bit more, because people don't think you've got the qualifications unless you're that ACA old school chartered accountant, whereas actually we're knowledgeable too.
I think it's changing now though.
Yeah,
Because I've now worked in I've worked in practice and in industry,
yeah,
and I've been doing that for much more than a decade at this point. And a lot of the people that are in senior positions that I've worked with are AAT qualified. They're not ACA qualified. They're not ACCA. They're not SEMA, and they've either qualified by experience or taken the AAT very later on in life, circa 20 years after they've even started in accountancy.
yeah.
And like you say, it just gives you that really good foundation knowledge that you need to do accountancy.
I think AAT covers such a wide spectrum of things. For example, at the moment, I'm learning management accounting, which, although I'm not doing it in my job, what opportunities could it open up for me in the future? And it's just nice to actually have a broader knowledge, and simple things that I've never thought of, like costing up a product. How many things you've got to put in for that one product then makes you think, as you're walking around Tesco's with things like that, you think, hang on, that product's only 50p. How many overheads have gone into that? How, like, the person's wages and things like that. And it does make you sort of value life a little bit more, as silly as that sounds, because
No,
you
it's not
actually
silly.
understand all of the concepts that have gone into things, and it just makes life that little bit more interesting.
Are there any things that you would have done differently?
If I could have gone back 5 years, I think I would have carried on once I'd finished level 3 to do my level 4, having that sort of, I think it was like an 8-year gap in between. I did feel that slight bit behind with the rest of my classmates, because they'd all just completed level 3, the knowledge was still in their head, whereas I was sort of 8 years behind. A lot of things had happened and I'd forgotten a lot of things. So I would sort of, I wish I'd still had the learning bug in me once I'd finished level 3, but I'm glad I'm back into it.
I think as well, again, having spoken to so many students who've, undertaken the AAT at different points, that's, you've got your individuals who are 16 just doing AAT, and then you've got individuals who've been doing, again, accounts or an accountancy related job for years, and then decide, okay, I want to do my AAT now. And it seems that even if you take the gap in between, because of the way that the levels are structured, you can always pick it back up again. And it's not like knowledge lost, is it? It's like returning to a friend again.
There's even been times like I've actually gone back onto the level 3 content just to read through things. So it's nice that AAT give you all of the content within your membership. It's not once you've finished, you can't access anything. It's really good that they've given you all of the resources. I think it's lifetime, isn't it? As long as you keep the membership, which I think is brilliant, because there's always times that you sort of need to go back and think, that's definitely how we do it.
Bit of CPD.
I definitely think that that's a really good thing about AAT.
Okay, so again, this is coming on to question 5, so we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but what would you then tell yourself, other than what we've spoken about, if you could go back 5 years, or if somebody came to you tomorrow and asked you about the qualification, what would you tell them?
I would definitely, from personal experience, sort of say, if you don't understand something, or even if you think you do, don't just take your tutor or somebody's word for gospel. If they tell you that 1 + 1 = 2, ask them why it does and why you need to do it that way, because I found that once you've learned why you're doing things, you actually understand it a lot more and you can put it into context. You can use examples, and then you're actually understanding why you're putting things on the debit side, why you're putting them on the credit side, rather than just having to remember, my bank is an asset. I remember
Yeah.
they always said go on the debit side. Whereas if you understand why you're doing that and what it then means in your accounts and things like that, then it definitely makes a lot more sense, and it sort of drills it in that little bit more. So just sort of asking for justification, because your teachers will know why you're doing it. They need to pass that knowledge on to you, because I find that that definitely helps. I've even in my office now, I've got little post-it notes with things like dead click on to tell me that like the debit side is for my assets and things like that. So just finding little things that help you. If they help you, there's no shame in using them, because you're going to do a better job at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter.
That's it. And I'll add to that actually, because in I've trained many staff just as part of various roles that I've had over the years. And the number one rule actually that I have is that it doesn't matter who you're working for. If you don't understand why you're posting something, don't post it. Don't do it unless you understand exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Because I like following on from that, I always think like in our jobs, my manager will review my job and then come back to me with questions, and they'll often say like, oh, why did you do that? And there's no good in me saying, oh, because somebody told me to. I actually need to go back and say, this is why. And then if it's wrong, they've got more chance in explaining to me why it's wrong and what I then need to do right, rather than just saying, oh, well, so-and-so said that it was wrong.
Yeah.
So I think it helps, especially my firm, then learn my thinking process behind it, and then they can turn around and say, well, think of it this way, and then it does make you think differently, because you're sort of understanding it and they're helping you further as well.
It sounds like you've got a very good firm that you're working for there. Very
I
good firm.
do. But yeah, I would say to other people who are interested in the qualification, that working in practice, working within the accountancy environment does help a lot, but not to be put off if they can't find a job straight away. Definitely don't hold back on doing the qualification if you can justify and afford doing it sort of self-studying. It isn't something that you do necessarily need that help with, although it does help. There's so many resources out there. There's so many online forums, tutors, things like that, that don't let it put you off because you don't have a job, because you may not get a job for 5 years, but if you could walk in 5 years' time with a qualification, you're still going to look more desirable than you would be if you didn't. So if you are in the position to just go ahead and do it, then I would definitely suggest that, because I think the qualification in itself is still manageable to do on your own.
No, I'd agree with that as well, because if you can show to an employer or future employer that you've got the willingness and drive to do the AAT off your own back and your own steam, then it just shows character. It just shows you're somebody who wants this and is able to do this.
If you say that you were interested 5 years ago, but like you couldn't really be bothered, that's not going to look good. Whereas at least if you can turn around and say, actually I funded level 2 on my own, things like that, then it does help, and it's a qualification at the end of the day.
Okay, well, that's all of the questions that I have. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much. It's
welcome.
Very much appreciated.
It's nice to be able to help other people that have once probably been in the situation I have. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you too, Kelly. You take
Bye.
care. Bye.